Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. So the topic that I've been given is, or I chose I should say, is the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names which are connected to power and dominion. And as you know, broadly speaking, we categorize the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into two categories, Jamali and Jalali. Jamali are all the beatific names, mercy, the merciful one, or, and so forth, the forgiving. And Jalali are the majestic names, right? And this is what I've chosen to focus on today. So names such as Al-Azim, the great, Al-Qawi, the strong, Al-Mateen, the firm, Al-Jabbar, the compeller, Al-Qahhar, the subduer, Malik al-Mulk, the owner of absolute sovereignty. And this is majestic names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grasp the earth, and he will roll up the heavens in his right hand, and he will say, I am the king, we're the kings of the earth. Right, subhanallah. So it doesn't matter how powerful people are in this world, right? They're nothing in reality in comparison to the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reason I wanted to focus on these particular names is because I think often we talk about the Prophet as a mercy to mankind. We focus on his beatific traits. We'll talk about how kind he was, how merciful he was. And I think sometimes our picture of the Prophet can be skewed, and we almost view him as this very soft, kind of not I don't want to say meek, but kind of not. If you think of Umar al-Khattab, you think really, masculine, really strong. Whereas you look when we talk about the Prophet, and rightfully so, he was kind, he was merciful. We kind of think of this person who's very soft and amicable, right? But actually, there is a time and place for being forgiving, and there is a time and place to actually show your power. And the Prophet does show his power, does show his strength at times in the seerah. An obvious time would be to show your power in the face of a bully. You're getting bullied. That's not a time to say, may Allah forgive you, may Allah guide you, and smile at the person. No, that's the time you have to stand up for yourself. You have to show strength to that type of person. So there is a time and place for being forgiving, and there is actually a time and place to be strong. There's a time and place to be firm with people. And so one of the examples is when the Prophet ﷺ, in the Meccan period, when he made dua against the leaders of the Quraysh. So you may remember the story. The Prophet ﷺ at the Kaaba, he's in sajda, he's praying, and Abu Jahl is coaxing the other ones and saying, look, let's mock him, let's do something. And so Uqba ibn Abi Muhayt is the wretched one who then goes and gets the entrails of a camel and puts it on the Prophet's back. It's so heavy he cannot come out of sajda, and they start laughing. So they're all laughing, giggling about, falling over themselves. Somebody runs home, tells Fatima radiallahu anha. She comes running. She takes that off the Prophet's back, and then she actually responds very strongly towards the leaders. The interesting thing is here, the Prophet didn't say to Fatima, it's okay, be quiet, or you shouldn't say that. He let her do that. You see? He let her do it because in this particular moment, that's the right thing to do. Right? Then he turns to them in a raised voice and he prays against them by name. Right? He says, oh Allah, destroy the chiefs of Quraysh, and then he mentions them. Destroy Abu Jahl and so forth. Utbah and Shayba and Umayyah and Uqba. And when he does this, they all fall silent. Their faces completely drop. They were mocking him. They completely drop. And it's almost like, when somebody's like nervous, somebody's just like seen a ghost. That is what happens to them. because they know this man is a man of truth, and his words, they go through them. And then Ibn Mas'ud said, on the day of the Battle of Badr, each one of them was killed, and they were thrown into a well, right? In the Battle of Hunain, which happens after the victory of Makkah, when the Muslims are for once have got a big number, and they go on the back foot, and people start running helter-skelter, what does the Prophet do? He stays firm. He stays firm, and he calls them all back. And they're all running away, he's going forward. He's going forward, and there's about a couple of hundred of them, and then he rallies them back. He rallies them around. We all know the story of the wrestler, Rukana, the undisputed champion, who told the Prophet, well, if you can beat me, I will become Muslim. And the Prophet wrestles him 3 times, not once. Because once you can say, I wasn't ready, I slipped. Slippery floor, right? But he does it 3 times. So the Prophet ﷺ has strength. He has power. But it's when do you use that? And see, because the thing is, see, when you're in a situation, when you're powerless, you can't do anything. But the question is, when you come into power, what do you do with it? So even Abu Bakr, who many of us, again, when we think of Abu Bakr, we think a soft person because, he used to cry when he led the prayer. But when he becomes the Khalifa, you see, he's the Khalifa, he is the leader, he becomes strong. And when what's called the battles of apostasy, Hurub al-Ridda, some of the tribes are coming and saying, look, can we negotiate, we're okay, but we don't want to give zakat, we don't do this and that. They go to Umar al-Khattab. And even Umar comes to Abu Bakr and says, why don't we just be a bit flexible because, we need these guys on board. Abu Bakr says to Umar, he says, Umar, Ya Umar. He grabs him, he says, Ya Umar, are you the same Umar? You used to be so strong in Islam, have you become a coward now? Abu Bakr is the strong one because the situation demands to be strong in that situation. You see? So, if you think of the Prophet ﷺ, in the Meccan period, he's on the back foot, right? He's obviously, his message is getting rejected. People are, if you think of actually what actually happened, it's quite incredible. Because remember, all of Quraysh is somehow related to him. They're all related to him in some shape or form because they all go back to a common ancestor. So these are people all related to him in some way, right? Obviously as an inner circle. But if you look at what they did, there's his relatives. They abused him, they belittled him, they mocked him, they lied against him, character assassination, they physically attacked him, emotionally attacked him, financially attacked him with the boycott, killed his followers, and eventually drove him out of his hometown. Can you imagine if all your relatives got together and threw you out? Like, you have to go and live somewhere else, go away. Your entire life, everything you've built, leave it. Just leave tomorrow. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at his majority of his life was actually in Makkah. It's only the last 10 years in Medina. The vast majority of his life is in Makkah. That's where he was born. That's where his grandfather was. That's where he married his first wife. He had all his children. That's where everything was there. It gets so bad he has to leave that. And he's fleeing for his life. Right? They were about to kill him. It's an assassination attempt. And then he goes to Medina. So he's on the back foot. He gets to Medina, and now they're beginning to get some power. Becomes the leader of Medina. They win the Battle of Badr. Obviously, there's issues, Battle of Uhud, Battle of Khandaq, and so forth. But slowly, they start to get, some type of strength, some type of power, some type of presence in the Arabian Peninsula. And so when he's been on the back foot all this time. It's only right at the end he's actually got the upper hand. When he does have the upper hand and he comes back to Makkah, you see, now you've got power. Now you have power. What is he going to do? Comes in Makkah, and as you know, all of you know, he says to them, what do you think I will do? and they say, you are a noble brother, son of a noble brother, hoping in his character. Because not only are they appealing to the tribal links, but they're also appealing to his character, which they knew from before prophethood, that you're a noble person. We only expect noble things from you. And then he says, I say to you, as I said to Yusuf, la tathriba alaykum al-yawm. Right? There's no blame upon you today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaghfirullahu lakum wa huwa arhamur rahimin. Allah will forgive you, inshallah, and He is the most merciful of the mercifuls. Right? So, when you have power, when you have the chance, remember, these are the same people who I just said killed his followers. They're the same people that drove him out, the same people that have been mocking him, lying, plotting, all of that. Right? Tried to kill him. He has now got power. They're at his mercy. He can take revenge. He can, if he did want to, be justified. He is now in that position. He can do whatever he wants. He is the undisputed leader at this point. And he chooses now to forgive when he didn't need to. Yusuf alayhi salam, again, we know the story. He gets thrown in the well. He gets sold into slavery. He gets unlawfully accused of seducing the wife of his master. He goes to prison for it, innocently. He stays longer in prison because the two guys forgot to tell the king, and so forth. Right? Eventually he comes out. So he's been on the back foot his entire life, and because of his dream, they put him in charge of basically what would be the agriculture minister in a time of famine. So he has now got power. And again, now you see this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does all of this. This is another test. The first test was difficulty, being patient. Now the test is, you've got power, what are you going to do? The brothers, the same brothers that tried to, remember that first of all they were trying to plot kill him, then they were the cause of everything that happened to him. They come to him, they are now at his mercy. What are you going to do? Are you able to forgive them? Are you able to overlook that when you've been wronged so much? So actually, when you are in a position of power, it's a test. Test is, will you be just? Will you be kind? Will you be merciful when you don't need to be because you have power? You don't have to do it. You can just snap your fingers. But will you control that? Will you abuse your position? And I'm not just talking about leaders here. It's anyone who has power over another person, parent over a child. Will you be kind to the child? Will you come down like a ton of bricks on the child if they do something wrong? Will you be forgiving to them? Husband over a wife, are you going to abuse that? We all probably know of talaq issues and so forth, and people not giving the maintenance to their wives and controlling them and so forth. The wife over the husband. Sometimes women get surprised when I say that they have power over their husbands. I have to explain it. But, you know...
Don't explain it too much now.
A wise woman knows the buttons to push in her husband, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them, obviously when it comes to emotions and so forth, they do have power. They have a degree of power over their husbands. It's just that the husbands don't know when they're being played. Some get played every day, all day, and have no idea that they're being played, right? But the point is, the wife also has power over the husband. But are you going to manipulate that? Are you going to use that power? You see? Because it could be she wants something from him, and she knows, see, if I start crying, he'll crumble. That's power. Because she wants him to do something. If I just shed a few tears, get emotional, he'll give in. So are you going to use that? Scholar over his or her students. And there are many like that who use their power to financially take advantage of the students, emotionally take advantage of them, sometimes, unfortunately, in intimacy as well. Second marriages, that kind of stuff, pressuring people, right? So these things are all possible. I'm not talking about power just as a leader. Any situation where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you power or position over others, right, is a test for you. Are you going to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You're going to be like Yusuf alayhi salam, who you control and you only exert it for just reasons? Or will you use it for your own gain? Will you use that power to serve yourself? Or will you use it to serve others? And that's a test that all of us go through. Like people say they're public servants. They've gone into public life to serve people. Like politicians say that. But then the test becomes, okay, will you use your position for your own gain? Or will you use it to serve your constituents or God's creation? And so anyone with power, anyone with influence over others, so now you get social influencers. Anyone who has influence on other people, or anyone who has any position where they have power over others, in actual fact, has a noose around their neck. You can't see it, but there's a noose around my neck right now. There's a noose around Dr. Asim's neck as well. Why? Because we have chosen to go into the scholarly field, so we are in a position to teach and so forth. There's a noose around my neck. Right? There's a noose around all of our necks. There's a noose around every social influencer's neck. Whatever they do, right or wrong, and millions of people are going to follow them, you're going to have to account for that in the next life. It's bad enough having to account for yourself, but if 1 million people have been influenced you in the wrong way, good luck to explain that. So, whether you're a scholar, whether you're an influencer, whether you're a politician, whether you're a mosque trustee, any position you have, you've got a noose around your leg. And when you understand that, you'll realize why when Umar al-Khattab becomes the Khalifa, he's not like some people who give speeches. This is the biggest honor of my life, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Umar's not saying that. Umar's like, oh my God, I've been burdened with this. And he said, what does he say in his first speech? It's a burden for me, it's a burden for you guys. Right? You're going to have to put up with me, and I've got to put up with you guys. That's because he's speaking from his heart. Why? Because he understands being in charge is a noose around your neck. Because you can get things wrong, and it influences so many people. And we know stories, isn't it, about Umar? About he used to worry about the animals because of the potholes, they make complain the day of judgment. We know he used to walk around listening. Because he's stressed about this responsibility. And when, as you know, he gets to Jerusalem, they can't even tell he's the leader. Because when the time he gets there, it's between him and his servant, it's his turn to walk. They don't even know who he is. Like his clothes had like patches in them. That's because he understood. He understood what it means to be in a position of power. Because see, when you're oppressed, you have no power. You can't do anything. All you can do is be patient. But when the tables turn, like Yusuf, the tables turn, what are you going to do now? And we see this clearly with what's happening in Israel. Right? Yes, there was oppression in Germany, right? But now, when the tables turned, what are you going to do with that power? They're oppressing people. Because one thing we have to understand, they say that in the sciences of the disease of the heart, they say the last disease to leave the heart is the want for position. That's the final thing that leaves, the want for position. Why? Because position gives you power over other people. Right? So, it's actually a shahwa, it's actually a desire that we have as humans, which is why scholars spent so much time trying to get rid of this. If you think of the word abd, right? Slave, abd. What does abd mean? What does abd mean? I kind of gave you the answer, so that shows you're sleeping. Abd means slave, right? What does it mean to be a slave? What does the word ibadah mean? What does ibadah mean? Worship. What does it mean in language, in Arabic language? It means to lower yourself. What are you lowering yourself to? Something higher. For you to lower yourself, you have to believe you're low. And you have to believe the other thing's higher. Right? Which means you need to submit to something greater. So the ego, the nafs, for this nafs to submit, it has to see itself as low. So when the nafs attributes significance to itself and power to itself, it stops it from submitting. Which is why Iblis, right? Shaitan, what happens? He's attributing significance to himself. Ana khayrun, I am better. I have power. I have significance. I am something. What is this path all about? It's working towards I am nothing. God, you're everything. And as long as you believe you're something, then there's going to be a veil between you and God because you can't fully appreciate the perfection of God. So that until the ego, the nafs, sees itself as insignificant in front of God, it cannot fully submit and it cannot fully appreciate God. And this is why the men of God or the women of God as well spent their lives subjugating their egos. They tried all sorts of different things to make themselves believe I am nothing in front of you, God. Right? Which is not an easy thing to do. Why? And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas antumul fuqara ila Allah. O mankind, you are the poor, the impoverished ones before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu huwal ghaniyul hamid. And Allah is the wealthy, the self-sufficient. In other words, absolutely independent of creation. And He is the one who's all praiseworthy, in other words, because He provides and supplies all your needs. So, when you have power, it's a test. Are you going to abuse that position? Are you going to abuse your power? When you abuse your power, that's oppression. And whether that oppression is small or big, it's still oppression. If the leader does it to his people, that's oppression. But when the husband does it to his wife, it's also oppression. Right? So the question is, all of us have to ask ourselves, are we oppressors in any shape or form? Are we abusers in any shape or form? Because what does Allah say? Wallahu la yuhibbul zalimeen. Allah does not love the oppressors. He didn't say small oppressors, big oppressors, he just said oppressors. So we have to ensure we need to rid any ounce of oppression that we are involved in. You know, we go on about, the people in Palestine are oppressed. Of course they're oppressed. We're demonstrating, what are you demonstrating against genocide? Oppression. How can you go into a demonstration and you're saying that I'm against oppression and you go home and oppress people in your own home? How does that work? You're an oppressor. You're a hypocrite. It doesn't make any sense. And this hadith, let's contemplate in this hadith. It says, لا يزال الرجل يذهب بنفسه حتى يكتب في الجبارين فيصيبه ما أصابهم. A man continues to let himself go. Meaning what? Meaning allowing one's ego to swell with arrogance, pride, self-admiration, elevating yourself above other people. That's what it means. Until he is recorded amongst the tyrants. And he will be punished as they are punished. So the question is, who do we want to be raised with? Do we want to be raised with the oppressors? Do we want to be raised with the tyrants? Well, if we don't, then one of the things we need to do is get rid of any oppression that we're involved in. It's not worth the risk. And the thing is, abuse of power happens in all fields. You read it in the news, such and such, person in the medical field, a doctor, abused, one of his colleagues. I speak to people, I was talking to a brother who's a lawyer. He says it happens in the legal field. Seniors taking advantage of our juniors. Happens in politics. We hear about it all the time. such and such got sacked because he was bullying other people. It happens in the mosques. It happens in every sphere. Because it's any situation where the human being is put in a position of power is open to abuse. Which is why you've got to work on yourself and you've got to control yourself in those situations, because it's very easy to cross the line. And if you look at the example of Sulaiman alayhi salam, we have the example of what you do when you have power. Right? So Sulaiman alayhi salam's got power over lots of things, over the jinn as well. The question is, how will we be when we are in positions of power? And like I said, I'm not talking just about leaders, any position of power, even a parent over a child, or a spouse over a spouse. When you're in any situation, work, you're a boss, you've got people underneath you, right? Any situation, the question is, will you be an abuser, or will you be humbled and fearful of accountability? That's your choice. In that position, you're either going to be an abuser, or you're going to be humble, and you're going to fear accountability and try to be as just as possible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslim kathir. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.